So speak life, when the sun won't shine and you don't know why. Look into the eyes of the broken hearted, watch them come alive as soon as you speak hope, you speak love, you speak life.
Welcome to another edition, another installment of Dealing with Life. Hi, I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith, and I'm thrilled to have you along with us. This is a show we do every single week at this time. We have a mission. We have guests on this show who have dealt with issues, with struggles, and have found victory and also a deepened faith through the process. And the reason behind that is to let you know, one, that you're not alone, and two, that through abiding in Christ, through a deep association with God and embracing the direction that He's taken your life, then you will find victory, you will find joy, and you will find peace. That's what it's all about. Life is search of joy and peace, and you can get that only through the power of God. We also have people on this show who have been called to help others. And that is today's purpose. In the studio with me is Dr. William Black. A lot of his friends, and he's included me in that pack, call him Donnie. Dr. Black is an adventurous man who has goodness, he's a missionary. He's a doctor, as you could probably see. We call him doctor. And he's also an author of two really powerful books. Donnie, how are you?
Very well. How are you, sir?
It's great to have you here, and to parse through your life and deal with trying to get a map of where you started and where you are now. It's incredible. You accepted Christ very young. How old?
I was 7 years old.
7 years old. Okay, and then your life just took place from there. But you found a calling to the medical field. You like me, when you were in college, you changed majors, I don't know, 60, 70 times.
Not that many.
Okay, but I think I saw in one of your things you changed majors 17 times.
Yes.
Okay, I think you have me beat, actually. But you found a calling. You early on. You were interested in math and science, right?
Yes.
And then in college, you found the calling to the medical field.
I was really struggling with what to major in. In my third year in college, I went to Bryan College in Dayton, Tennessee.
Okay.
And I learned that if I would just abide in Christ, He would get me where I needed to be.
Yeah.
And then I came back to UT, and I was majoring in physics, and there was a friend of mine who had been my lab partner in zoology, and he was always trying to get me to go back into pre-med. And I told him how much fun I was having as a physics major, and he said, "What are you going to do, have fun or help people?" And those words pierced my heart.
Yeah, that'll stop you in your tracks.
Yes.
Yeah. So what happened? What'd you do then?
Well, I applied for medical school, and it was right before they were going to meet to decide who was going to be accepted. In 3 weeks, I knew that I was in, and I had 2 quarters at UT left to finish up the prerequisites of organic chemistry. I needed 1 quarter of organic chemistry and another couple of quarters of physics and some physical chemistry,
right,
and embryology. I think those were the main things.
Wow. You had a focus pretty early on what area you wanted to be in order to help people.
Actually, early on, I sort of liked everything I did. But my senior year, things started coming together, and I thought I needed to be a surgeon. But then as an intern, I did a lot of surgery, and I couldn't tolerate the scrubbing. I got hand dermatitis, and I think that was one of the ways that the Lord used to get me into internal medicine and then the subspecialty of nephrology.
Okay. Now, for people like me who don't understand, define nephrology real quickly.
Nephrology is a subspecialty of internal medicine dealing with kidney disease and high blood pressure.
Okay.
And it's not like a urologist who's a surgeon. We're medical kidney doctors.
Gotcha. And diabetes, high blood pressure, a lot of the things. Kidneys you can't do without.
Yes, diabetes and hypertension shorten the length of the kidney of the life of the kidney.
Okay.
And during the years I was in practice, as a group, medicine discovered better ways to try to treat those people, to try to prevent their kidneys from getting worse.
Okay, gotcha. And what I didn't realize, and just not knowing the history very well, but when you were going into practice, dialysis was in its early stages.
Yes.
And they didn't understand really. I mean, it was all trial and error, right?
Well, that was one of the reasons probably that I was in practice a short time in a couple of other places, because I joined people who were general internists. I mean, the subspecialties weren't as well developed in the 1970s.
Okay. And it's obviously a lot better now, but you saw the early stages and the development and how the better it got, the
Yes.
healthier people could get.
Yes.
Okay. So, but what intrigues me about you and what you went through in your pursuit of medical helping is you saw that it was just as important, if not more important, to not only treat the physical condition, but to also treat the soul.
Yes. One of the things I learned was that anything I ever did for anybody medically was temporary, because sooner or later everybody was going to die.
I'm going to die anyway.
But
it's a tough way to look at it, but it's true.
But everybody that Jesus performed a miracle on, they all died.
Yeah.
And the only thing I ever did that was permanent for the people was to help them spiritually.
Well, yes. I mean, dying is not the end of the story.
No.
It is for our physical bodies. And we do want to stay as healthy as possible while we're here.
But if we study God's provisions, one of his provisions may be death. There's a time when it's time to die.
Yeah. But that's just the body. The soul goes on. And it either is with God or without. And without God is easily defined as hell. But with God, if your soul is nurtured and you have found and abide in Christ, you will be with him forever.
Yes.
And that's hopeful, and that's the goal if our heart finds that calling. But you have run across so many people who needed spiritual help. You've written 2 books, and we'll get into these books a little later, but I do want to mention them right now. You have one book called Finding Strength in Weakness, and you have one book called The Rage Within, and it's all about anger. And man, they're powerful. But I want to talk in the remaining time of this segment about your calling to the mission field, and also your calling to help people who you already were helping.
Initially, I developed a list of Bible verses that I got from personal reading of Scripture from church and from the radio, and I collected those verses, and I would give them out to people who were maybe depressed a little bit about their physical problems.
Okay.
And from the feedback I got, it was a great encouragement.
Well, I would think, and as a medical doctor, you can probably talk a lot about this, but healing not only involves medical help, but it also involves mental strength. If you don't want to get better, you won't. Or if you don't have the will to get better, until your heart wants to improve. Is that right? Do you believe in that?
Yes. Sometimes people, it's just hard for them to get better because they don't have any hope.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to have hope. And one of the things that this list of verses did was give them hope. I got several testimonials from people about that.
Okay. Well, I mean, early on, when you were helping some people, give us an example. I know you have some stories of people that you gave these lists of verses to, and you talked it out with them, and you showed them hope. that they actually did improve?
Well, there was one little girl that I saw who had Hodgkin's disease, and she was treated, and she had a relapse, and she was treated again, and she got a cure. And I communicated with her several years later about perhaps she wouldn't be where she was in life if I hadn't been there. And she shot me back an email and said that that I did a lot for her besides just physically.
Right, just doing the doctor work.
Yeah, I helped her spirit.
And that's the magic.
And she got that list of verses, and she kept it with her for years.
Just a few of these. Job 5:7. There's so much hope in Job. Once Job understood who God really is. Matthew 5, 1 through 12, Matthew 6, 25 through 34, Romans 5. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's so much hope in the Bible and what Jesus showed us. And it's fruit for the Spirit. And
it's also verses about how God is in control, and we may not understand what He does all the time. He may disappoint us sometimes, but we can still trust Him.
Yeah. Well, it's disappointing, or it's just not the direction that we thought we should go. When God has a complete different idea of where our life needs to be and how we can help Him.
Well, I knew a man who's a fine Christian who his son had a stillborn child, and that was a disappointment.
Yeah. Life does have many disappointments, but when you grab onto God and say, "Let me use this to bless other people and help other people through their struggles," then it eases the pain.
That's 2 Corinthians 1, 3 through 5.
There you go. Well, and I want to just mention here real quickly, because the list is just incredibly long. You were called to the mission field.
Back in 1993, we were going to Berean Church, and my son signed up for a mission trip to Guatemala. And I thought, he can't do that. He needs for me to go with him, so I signed up too. And
he can't do that alone, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I had no idea what a difference it made having a physician on a mission trip, and how it really brought out the crowds. And in 4 days, we saw about 400 patients.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So not only were you there for spiritual help, but you came as a doctor, and you came and you've been to not only Guatemala. You've been to Nicaragua, Honduras, Cuba, Haiti, the former USSR, which I want to talk about in a little bit, Lithuania, Ukraine, Romania, Africa, Asia. I mean, you have taken the word service to God and, man, put it on paper. You amplified it.
Well, the two great commandments are to love God and to love others. And to love God, that means obey Him. And to love others, that means to serve them.
Serve them, absolutely. That doesn't mean go up and shake their hand and say, "Hey, how you doing?" That means let me help you. Incredible. So now we know you a little bit. I want to get into your books, and I want to get into more of your perspective, your godly and also doctorly perspective on how to help others, because it's so inspiring. Dr. William Black, we know him as Donnie, is here with us and is going to share his insight on dealing with anger and also dealing with struggle and finding strength in weakness. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. That's a book about faith, life, and trust and worry through the eyes of a dog. We'll be back in a minute.
If you got pain, He's a pain taker. If you feel lost, He's a way maker.
Don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about a thing.
You're listening to Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith, and we're talking today in the studio with Dr. William Black. He asks to be called Donnie. You can call him either one. You can call him Donnie Black, Dr. Black. But he is not only an author of 2 incredibly powerful books, but also a medical doctor. And tell me the field, the specialty.
Nephrology.
Nephrology. I knew I was gonna mess that up. But one thing that's so impressive to me, you learned early on in your training as a doctor, not just to talk, but to listen.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
One of the things that I was taught in medical school was that the difference between a good doctor and a bad doctor is that the good doctor cares.
Yeah, I would buy that.
And then the other thing I was taught was that if you listen to people long enough, they'll tell you what's wrong with them.
Okay.
And
yeah.
Now there's less of an opportunity to do that because the way that the government has gotten involved in medical care and telling the doctors what they have to do with a computer to get paid, they don't have as much time to listen to the patients.
That's tough.
But sometimes when people are dealing with hard things, they need somebody to listen to them. It seems to me that women especially process their inner struggles by talking to others.
Okay.
And for people with unresolved grief, the 4 steps of that is they need to accept the reality of the loss. They need to work through the pain of grief. They need to reorganize their life around a new set of normal circumstances. And they need to take the emotional energy tied up in what was lost and reinvest it in people that are still here. Now, talking about what happened helps those first 2 steps. It helps people move through them more easily.
To get past pain. Yeah. And then the last 2 steps take you to a new, like you said, a new normal. And you got to involve God with that.
Yes.
Tell me your version of why that's important.
He's the source of our healing. I mean, he's the source of our physical healing and our spiritual healing too.
Yeah.
If it weren't for the immune system he put into our body, our cuts and scrapes would never heal.
It'd kill us. Yeah.
So he's the source of that since he created us. And he's also the source of our spiritual healing. Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. And he also said that he would give us peace. Of course, one of the things that we need to do to access that peace is to stay united to the vine. In John 15, Jesus was talking about the vine and the branches, and he said that we could not remain connected to our source of spiritual power unless we were obedient. That we were to love God, which means obey Him, and we're to love others, which means to serve them.
Right.
And one of the ways we serve them is just listening when they need to talk.
I'm very guilty of not doing that. Men, I guess, are fixers, and so you hear 3 words and you instantly get into fix mode.
This is what you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. And my wife just looks at me like, will you just let me talk for a minute? And it's so true. One thing I also want to talk to you about that I think is just a big part of who you are is you were in the Army. You enlisted in 1969, and then you were in Vietnam as not only a surgeon, but you were also in a tank battalion.
Yes.
Tell us what you learned and how that has shaped you.
There was some unresolved grief that I brought back from Vietnam.
I'm sure.
Particularly some of the people that died that I knew pretty well. And actually, it wasn't till I went to one of the reunions of the tank battalion in the year 2000 that I was able to overcome that unresolved grief. They were reading the names at the Vietnam Wall. They were reading the names of the people from our battalion who had been killed in Vietnam, and one guy was putting a carnation under each name, and it tore my heart out.
Yeah.
And the chaplain
just to have it all right there in your face.
Well, one of the things that helps us work through the pain is to experience the pain, and I was really experiencing it at that time.
Okay.
But the chaplain whispered in my ear, "Pray this prayer: Jesus, I can't handle this, but you can, and I choose to let you do so." And instantly, my spirit revived, or something.
Yeah.
And some people would call that turning it over to the Lord. And there are several verses in the Bible that speak to how effective that is. And in some people, it's just as effective as what I experienced.
Yeah. Say that prayer again. Say what he said to you. I want to accentuate that.
Jesus, I can't handle this, but you can, and I choose to let you do so.
It's such an easy prayer, but so powerful. And we just forget. We forget to do that. We get caught up in the grief. We get caught up in the struggle.
One of the things that sort of got me ready for when my wife had cancer was I went through a lawsuit that never went anywhere, but for 3 years it hung over my head. And
that's a source of stress.
Yes, but as I read the Bible during those 3 years, I marked a lot of verses in my Bible that ended up in that first book.
Okay.
After they couldn't find any expert witness to testify against me, and the suit was dropped, it wasn't but 3 or 4 months later till Barbara got cancer, and when she got cancer, she told me about it. I had an idea of what I was going to be facing the next few years.
Sure.
And I wasn't upset about it. I wasn't mad at God. I just thought, this is what I have to do. But I think he was getting me ready with some of these other experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe God is very much that. He is a preparer. And, we have to look back in our past. We don't have the ability to look forward. We can look back and say, I can do this because he prepared me.
One of the things we're supposed to do is remember what he's done for us in the past, and that's supposed to give us confidence about the future.
Well, it's difficult when you're facing something head on, and like you can use that, your wife informing you that she has cancer, you get caught up in that moment, and it's very hard to look back at the blessings, but they're there.
Well, those 5 years I was her spousal caregiver, those were good years. I mean, we had some hard times, but we were closer than we'd ever been before.
Wow. And that's so magic to look at it that way.
Soulmates.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably time. Closer to God.
Yeah.
Both of you. How magic. So the first book that you wrote, it's called Finding Strength in Weakness, a study of tribulation and our appropriate response. How do you define tribulation?
Tribulation is stress that's brought about by outward or difficult circumstances.
Okay.
It includes anguish of heart.
So, okay, good. Then what is our response to tribulation?
Love God and love others. And under love God was humility, submission, communion with God, obedience, trust, and acceptance. And then I decided that love others wasn't comprehensive enough for the second part, so I said, bear spiritual fruit. And the first thing was perseverance, which is no piece of cake sometimes. And
sure,
the second one's love for others, forgiveness for others, service to others, and all that leads to hope, because if you're doing what God wants you to do, you can take confidence in his promises.
Yeah, and that's where you find hope.
And that I woke up about 4:30 one morning while I was working on that, and I realized that Jesus did every one of those in and around the crucifixion.
Wow.
Now, when he prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, if it let this cup pass from me, not my will but thine be done. I've heard it said that was acceptance, but that wasn't acceptance. That was submission, because he was still sweating drops of blood.
Absolutely, he was. I mean, like anybody, any human, the human part of him was scared to death.
He was not at peace. But then later, when the arresting party came, he said things like, "Hark, here comes my betrayer."
Yeah.
And friend, do what you came for.
He was a total peace.
And he was the one that made sure Peter would have the sword. And Peter cut the guy's ear off. Yeah. And Jesus put it back on. And he said, all who live by the sword will die by the sword. And then he said, I could call on my Father, and he would send 12 legions of angels, but how else would be fulfilled what was written? And then he also said, I must drink the cup my Father has given me. Now, initially, when he was saying, may this pass from me, he was looking at things from a short-term perspective.
Yeah.
But later he was looking at things from an eternal perspective, which is what we're supposed to do.
And he submitted. He submitted to the will and the needs of God.
And then he was at peace. Now, when you talk about anger, people talk about Jesus getting angry, like when he cleared the temple.
Yeah.
But when they were beating up on him and whipping him and saying all these ugly things about him, he didn't get angry at that. I mean, he had control over his spirit.
Well, that's where we're going to go next. Next, we're going to talk about the other book, which is more recent, The Rage Within, How to Deal with Anger. And that's going to be, I can't wait to dig into that. This is Dealing with Life. We have Dr. Donnie Black with us, author, missionary, doctor, Army surgeon. I mean, the list goes forever and ever. And I'm so enjoying our conversation. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, and we'll deal with more in just a second.
Trying hard to fill the emptiness. The peace is gone. Left the puzzle undone. Ain't that the way it is? 'Cause you are beautiful, no matter what they say. Words can't bring you down. No, no.
You're listening to another installment of Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith, a book about life and faith and worry through the eyes of a dog named Mango. And that book is available through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, Cokesbury.com, and other places. In the studio with me today has been a fascinating conversation, and we ain't done yet. Dr. William Black. Donnie Black is with us, amazing author, missionary, doctor, tell me this nephrologist. I don't know why I have trouble with that, but it's the kidney and the disease of kidney, and you've been a specialist you were a doctor for 35 years.
I practiced for 35 years.
Good grief. St. Mary's, and you've helped countless people.
32 years at St. Mary's.
Okay. And through helping with not only kidney issues, but also soul issues. You've helped so many people through difficult issues. And your latest book, you have one book out called Finding Strength in Weakness, and that's been out for a little bit. It's gone all across the world and sold many, many copies. But now the new-ish book, is called The Rage Within, The Christian Approach to Dealing with Anger. And one thing that is just, it brings it out to the forefront is anger is said to be the strongest of all emotions. How about that? How do we deal with it? Well, I mean, we think of anger and we think of Job, and you talk about Job a lot, but you have a different perspective on Job.
I have a brother that settled in England, so I've been over there several times. And in an old bookshop up in Edinburgh, I found a book called Letters to Christians Dealing with Affliction. And it was published in 1817 in Glasgow. There's no author. I guess the people that wrote the letters are the author. But there was a Mrs. Isabella Graham that wrote a letter, and in there she mentioned Job's presumption. And I had never really heard that before, but I had some ideas about what that might mean. So I made an outline, and I read through Job, and I put the verses in the pigeonholes.
Okay.
And as it turned out, Job knew he was prosperous. Job thanked God for it. But Job had fear that the prosperity would be taken away from him. So he thought the way to keep his prosperity was to obey God. And he was doing all he could to obey God.
Okay.
There were some things he was pretty proud of. He was proud of his empathy for others. He was proud of his wisdom. He was proud of his service to others.
Right.
But
and he thought that would keep everything wonderful from then on out.
He thought he was taking care of his part of the bargain, and God was supposed to take care of the other part.
And not
bless
the
him.
greatest assumption.
No.
Because a lot of us nowadays have the same thing. As long as we're good people, nothing bad should happen.
Now, Job's response to his affliction initially was good, but then later on, he got mad. I mean, he said some pretty terrible, ugly things.
Yeah, we
about
talk
God.
about the patience of Job. Yeah, but you
Well-
dig in there for just a couple of seconds. He did get mad.
But he persevered
True.
in spite of his disappointment.
Yes, but he did get mad and said some pretty hateful things to God.
Yeah, one thing he said was, man's days are, this is Job 14:5-6. Man's days are determined. You, God, have decreed the number of his months and have set limits he cannot exceed. So look away from him and let him alone till he has put in his time like a hired man. And then this, to me, is the worst of all, Job 14:18-19. But as a mountain erodes and crumbles, and as a rock is moved from its place, as water wears away stones and torrents wash away the soil, so you, God, destroy man's hope.
Ooh, ouch.
That's pretty ugly.
Yeah, and God quickly reminded him who was in charge.
Yes. Well, I think Job had a sense of entitlement.
Yeah, I agree.
And God reminded him that everything belongs to God
Yeah, we don't deserve anything.
except hell.
Yeah, I surely do. Yeah, I mean, I think I do good for a minute, but I remember very quickly, I don't deserve anything. I don't deserve any goodness from God.
The other thing I thought was interesting is that even after all this was over, he was still God's man.
Yeah,
And I think that's because even though he said some ugly things about God, he never lost his faith. He was still searching for God, still trying to find him, still looking to the east and to the west. And
God had grace, has had grace then, has grace now,
yes,
and we don't deserve that.
no, but Job had to pray for his three friends and offer sacrifices. I remember, and he was still God's man, and they couldn't have been absolved of their guilt unless Job had done that.
Right. And there's things to be learned through this. I mean, our anger can get us in so much trouble. I don't think God minds that we get angry, but God does mind what we do from the anger.
When we feel we've been treated unfairly, the things we're not to do are to be presumptuous with God, to have a sense of entitlement with God, and to charge God with wrongdoing. But what we are to do is keep the faith, humble ourselves before the Lord, examine our life and repent of any known sin, seek the Lord, remember God's character, remember what God expects of us and what He has promised, submit to the reality of things we can't change, and ask God for a right understanding of the issues involved.
That if we could do that every time, the peace would come over us in any angry situation.
This all came straight out of the book of Job.
Give us a couple of hints how you work through anger.
Well, I think part of it is establishing patterns. I don't think it happens instantly.
No.
But one of the things that when we get angry, there's a triggering event, and that can be something that happens externally or something that we think about. And then there's a period of increasing intensity of emotion.
Okay.
And that's when we brood. And one of the words the Bible used to describe that is fretting.
Okay.
We fret.
Yeah.
And
Some take very short time to fret, and some
Yeah.
are slow to fret, but when they do, it's explosive.
it's variable length of time, but fret is used, the Hebrew word for fret in the Old Testament, it's like kindling a fire.
Okay.
And another thing that I think that I got from the Apocrypha in 4th Maccabees was how we need to use our sense of reason to overcome our anger. For instance, I don't like to be inconvenienced. And it really bothers me when the slowpoke in front of you makes it through the yellow light and I don't.
Yes. It's funny how anger is so exaggerated when we're driving.
The other thing is, it bothers me when there's a utility truck blocking my way and we have to alternate
Yeah,
which
we
side
have to change
goes.
our path.
But if we didn't live in a fallen world, there wouldn't the power lines wouldn't break down.
True.
There would be no potholes in the road that we would have to fix. And one of the things I found in thinking about this is that my timing is more important than my time.
Okay. I like that.
And some of the best divine appointments that I've had speaking to people about the Lord have been after I've been inconvenienced.
Well, yeah. Yeah, your emotions are stirred up.
And one of the things that David said to the Lord is, my times are in your hands. And I say that to myself when I get stuck in a mess and I start getting resentful about it. I just say, my times are in your hands, and that helps me.
Well, we don't always draw on the power and the strength of God when things are great and we're not upset or we're not sad or we're not hurt. We sometimes have to be sharply reminded not only why we're here, but what's truly important and why in the world are we angry in the first place. So the book is called The Rage Within, and there's so many nuggets of ideas and places to look and read about in the Bible about how to deal with anger. And that's such an important issue now. I think anger is just rampant. I mean, goodness, road rage is scary. Dr. William Black is with us in the studio. Donnie Black, who wrote The Rage Within and also Finding Strength in Weakness. We will talk in just a few minutes more about, one, where to get these books, and a little more about dealing with anger. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker. We'll deal with more in just a minute.
I did not realize that I had it wrong. 'Cause you give till it's gone.
You're listening to Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. And one thing when we deal with life is we deal with anger. And that's what we've been talking about. In the studio with me is Dr. William Black. He's written two really amazing books. Not only is he a missionary and a doctor, but also he is the author of the book Finding Strength in Weakness. And the book we've been talking about most recently is a book called The Rage Within. Dr. Black, we'll call you Donnie because that's what you like. One of your favorite definitions of anger, I have this here, is the feeling that wells up inside when our sense of justice is violated. What's the problem with anger?
One of the problems with our sense of justice is that we're under the influence of the world, the flesh, and the devil.
Okay.
So we may be angry because we think an injustice has occurred, but we may be wrong.
Well, yeah, we don't always take that into account. It divides.
Yes.
Anger just puts a division in it. There's a thing in your book that that I read. I'd love for you to read it about anger.
I was thinking about anger one day, and these words came to mind. When I'm angry, I'm less aware. I'm too preoccupied to be in communion with God. When I'm angry, I'm not humble. My sinful nature is in control. When I'm angry, I'm not teachable. My sinful nature is in control. When I'm angry, I'm not submissive to God. My sinful nature is in control. When I'm angry, I'm not obedient to God. My sinful nature is in control. When I'm angry, I'm not trusting God. My sinful nature is in control. When I'm angry, I'm not at peace. My sinful nature is in control. When I exhibit rage, I'm not in control. My sinful nature is in control. When I'm angry, I'm guilty of presuming too much on my own behalf and of rebelling against God. Let me just add that when we're angry, it's hard to die to self.
Yes, it really is. Because anger is probably fueled by pride and the sense of entitlement, like you've said a couple of times. It's so powerful. Thank you for being here today and imparting your wisdom, And we want to talk about Finding Strength in Weakness by Dr. William Black, and also The Rage Within, the Christian approach to dealing with angers. Where can we find these books?
They have met over the internet.
Like Amazon?
Yeah.
And I guess you search Dr. William Black.
Yeah. Cedar Springs Christian Bookstore.
Gotcha. They have them in stock.
Yes.
That's incredible. I want to really say thank you for being here and helping us focus. The two most important things, you've said it a couple of times, but I don't want you to say it again. The two most important things that we are charged to do
Are to love God and love others.
And that's...
And when we love God, that means obey Him.
Yeah.
And when we love others, that means serve them.
And that's powerful. If we can do those two things, good grief, how life would change. Thank you again for being here, and thank you for your service, for your Army service in Vietnam, for the 35 years that you worked as a doctor to help people, not only physically, but spiritually. And thank you for imparting your wisdom here today. God bless you.
Thank you.
This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, and remember, anger gets you nowhere. In many cases, we end up hurting people instead of helping them, and we also sometimes end up being vindictive rather than trying to repair things. When we act in a calm fashion, it speaks volumes. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. I pray that God shines His light not only to you, but through you. God bless.
You speak